I'm gonna like not really switch gears, but like just going back to like how we can support our peers and support each other like through what's going on right now with all the school closures. And this is gonna relate back to the conversation we had before was so like you're struggling to suddenly switch all your courses to be online.
Yeah.
And like what kind of struggles, April, have you faced? Like no matter what they are, like how big or small you think they are, like start at the beginning, like what has your experience been like taking your courses from being face-to-face to online? Go.
Okay. Wow. That's asking
No
me
pressure.
a lot.
Well, I remember you talking about even just you were reluctant to have your face on camera.
Yeah, well, I was weirded out when I first started using Office 365, and they showed me how to. No one showed me. I sort of figured it out.
Oh, here's some context. So we're using Microsoft Teams.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Same here.
Us too. Yeah. Use whatever you like, but you have Microsoft Teams if you want to use it. All the kids are on it already. But they largely were just like, do whatever you'd like to deliver online, however you want to do it. They were really open.
They said we didn't even have to deliver online.
They gave us paper options. They're like, students can come pick up packages at the school, whatever. So they were literally like, anything flies, which is really nice.
Which is good. I thought that was really smart.
And we were talking about like, okay, so the format of making a video online. And you're like, well, I don't want just my face floating there talking about the notes.
I started to do a lesson and I thought to myself, when is this normal that they simply stare at my face for 10, 20 minutes? At first it was 20 minutes and I'm like, not going to happen. And then I realized, okay, 10 minutes max, because even, when I'm scrolling through YouTube and I want to watch stuff, if it's over 5 minutes, I'm not interested. So I realized I had to cook it down for, between 5 and 10 minutes. And I realized no one wants to look at my face solid, for, more than 30 seconds. Even naturally, you don't do that.
You were one of the inspirations for my rip-off Khan Academy videos, my 10-minute maths. Because you were like, no one wants to see your face for longer than 5 minutes.
No.
So then I was like,
hear your voice.
10-minute long videos where it's just like exactly like Khan Academy, like kind of like just writing, like on the digital software, and just my voice.
Yeah, and I kind of did in between because I did want to use the videos to make, I felt like I needed to maintain a connection with my students. So, I did want to say hi. I did want them to see me, but just not a protracted amount of time. So I learned very painfully, I might add. I mean, my first video was 17 takes.
How many hours?
I can relate to that.
How much time did you dump in to the first thing that you did?
To getting here, I would say 3 solid days of learning. It's embarrassingly a lot.
But I think that's the reality. Like, that's what people are going through.
And it wasn't just me learning. It was, I had software failures and hardware failures that I was blaming on myself. I thought, oh, surely I've done something wrong. And because I had no colleagues to connect to say, hey, what are you guys doing? Because no one actually knew. I went on persevering on this issue that was in fact simply my laptop was lousy. And when after days, of struggling, I traded in my laptop for a new one and everything functioned perfectly. And I'd blown off at least 8 solid hours.
Trying to figure it out.
It wasn't me at all.
And I was just a text message away that whole time.
I know, but listen, here's the irony of it. I actually reached out and I emailed like the top tech guy, and he did not call it out. He's like, well, download this and download that. And I'm like, oh my friggin' God.
Nobody's thinking like, hey, like how old is your hardware?
Yeah. It was just someone in the school, actually. Who was it?
Who cares?
It was Ingrid. And who helps us out with the PLCs in the school. And she's like, you know what? I think it's your laptop. Thank God I went for a second opinion, or it would have been way more than 8 hours solid blown. I would have gone off on a wild goose chase again and probably broken the laptop over my knee.
So do you think that's like a roadblock? Like imagine you were still teaching face-to-face. You're like, oh, I'm going to try to make some online videos or something.
Yeah. You
would have given up. Would you have given up?
No, I wouldn't have given up. I would have been able to solve the problem way faster if there was a proximity of people. I could say, hey, are you having this problem? You're having that problem. I could, compare problems and go, oh, it's not me. They're doing the same thing. it's the hardware I need to trade up. But that, went from a 5-minute problem to just a ridiculous amount of time.
Seeing if it was me 2 or 3 years ago, and I was just like, oh, I'll just try to make some online videos, and I started having issues like that, I think it'd be likely that I might be like, maybe I'll do that in a month, and then maybe it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Well,
there was a slight, I felt a little bit obliged because I had been hearing that so many other teachers are doing, online streaming, and I saw Sukhminder across the hall and he was doing it. I'm like, God, what is wrong with me?
He doesn't know I unplugged his camera like weeks ago. He's
and so
he thinks he's streaming.
For me, the bar was set, and I was like, God, I must be able to do that. But it resulted in me just banging my head against the wall for a long, long time. But anyway, I figured it out, and now it's good. And I do, a little FaceTime under a minute, and then I switch to, showing them applications, not focused on me. And
so are you using, like, what's the format of your videos? You got some screencasting software?
You know what? I'm just I go in Teams, and I start a meeting in Teams, and then I go to recording it, and then I start talking to them, and then I switch to share desktop view, and I do whatever I need to do on the desktop, and then, hey, I try and switch back to my face. I can't seem to do that. I don't know why. So after I disappear, they never see me again, and I just talk from behind a screen where my static face appears. So I don't know what the heck, but that's small potatoes compared to everything else. The show.
April, have you tried the whiteboard app side of Teams?
No, I
that's pretty cool because
blown off all this time. I have played with it a little bit. I've gone on and I see how you can scribble and stuff.
Yeah,
so
and the kids can scribble with you.
Is that so?
Yeah. If you can have a big curse.
See, at this point, when I'm doing my classes, I am pre-recording. I'm not expecting anyone to join me. Because, hey, I want to do it in the morning while my makeup is still good. And my students still wake up until 2 or 3. And by then, it's starting to melt. So, I want it, the best baked light.
Optimal.
Yeah.
Well, Zoom has a whiteboard and blackboard feature too, like for that stuff. And I bought a writing pad.
Yeah.
Like I got it off Amazon. It's like $70. It's huge. It's like I don't know. It's like the size of it's bigger than a
face mat
pad. And I just hook it up to my computer and I use the smart notebook software.
Yeah.
And I go to presentation mode. And I just use a black background now, and I just write. Like I'll have my questions like already pre-made or whatever I'm going to review, and then I just talk into the mic and write using my stylus, and that's what I use for my 10-minute math videos.
Well, I know when you first started, I saw you just recording yourself up at the smart board.
Yeah.
And that was it.
I still do that. Like that's like what I do. Like that's what I used to do when I taught, like when the kids were here.
Yeah.
I just had my tripod. I just used my cell phone.
Yeah.
And I would set it up and I would just record.
And that was easy.
It was easy. Like if if you're trying to dive into it, like the biggest roadblock is just like, where do you start?
Well, I've got to say, I tried to start like he did, and it wasn't a win for me because he teaches math. I found it's way easier to deliver something like math that way.
Sage on the stage. Like if I'm just going to do exposition, and that's fine. Like you need exposition. You need to cover content sometimes.
Yeah, and that's
a grade 12 pre-calc. It's like, so you're just going to do exposition 20 minutes.
Right.
And then, but the idea was put it online so that if you want to see it later or, DeMuro goes too fast because he sucks, then you can go online and like watch that 5-minute part of the video.
Yeah, I think that's a total win.
Yeah, and it cost me nothing. Like, I mean, it would take like half an hour maybe to upload it and do all the description stuff.
Well, and you wouldn't have to do extra stuff outside of what you were simply, recording your class. So there wasn't all this extraneous activity after hours, and the delivery was there. So I thought it was great.
And you know what? I read that idea, and was it Bergman and Sams? The guys who did the flipped classroom model? Like, I read their book like 5 or 6 years ago, and that's what they said. They're like, we literally picked up a video camera because they started in the 1990s. Yeah. Like, and we just recorded our lecture.
That's so long ago.
Yeah. They're
so
like,
last century.
Right. And here, I started doing this in 2019 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm doing the same thing these guys are doing in like 1999. Like, but I'm getting there. Like, I'm doing something different, and then maybe I can flip my class in the future and be like, hey kids, like go watch a video at home, and then in class we'll do some activities for math instead.
And I really feel like kind of the silver lining of this all, and like we've mentioned this before too, is teachers need to move their practice some way, right? And so whether it's by using Microsoft Teams or something like that, by teachers learning how to use Microsoft Teams, it's going to provide, a space where teachers can put resources for students, or things like if you're doing a flipped classroom, like Microsoft Teams would be amazing because you can just kind of put all of your content there, and students can go into it and find it easily, and they could submit work on there or things like that. So yeah, like I think just kind of the silver lining of this all is teachers have to move their practice, and whether they like it or not, but I think it's probably for the best.
Well, I have a kind of a comment to that. Do you guys think that once this is all over, will we just go back to the way it always was, or is this actually going to be a turning point? Are some people just scrambling and, well, I'll learn Skype or use Teams or whatever and have my content and not worry as much about assessment and that, worry more about the learning because we have to right now, and then once this is over, we just go back to desks in a row and sage on the stage and all that, like, or is this going to be a turning point? What do you guys think of that?
I think it's gonna like, and I don't want to be too bleak. I can easily see many people just being like, "Oh, thank God that's over."
Yeah.
Like, and I can go back to what I used to do.
Yeah.
That's
but
what
I
I'm
think
worried about.
also going to be students and teachers. But students are going to be like, "Hey, but you know what? It was kind of useful when I could connect with you online." Or like it was kind of useful when you posted that video, and then I could just see it when I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And some teachers are going to be like, huh. And so like, and you don't even need that many teachers to change. Like if you got, like in our school, what is it, 50 teachers? 70?
Yeah.
If you got 5 people doing it, and they make themselves visible.
Yeah.
And they're just like, hey, like you want help? Like I'll come to your class and
I think that's the key.
I think that you just need those little seeds.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's what this creates, is the people like you, April, like we're the little seeds who are like, you know what, I did this, it's not that hard, I'll set you up.
Yeah. So people helping people, teachers helping teachers. You have to have those. You're right. It's not going to be across the board, but you have to have those people modeling what it looks like for people to go there. That being said, I see we do a lot of accommodations, say, for example, for student athletes. Often they have to miss last period for hockey and the like. And so I think with these online classes, this is a great way to accommodate them. By the same token, the flipped classroom, even though I do get it in theory, I find that problematic for a lot of those same sort of student athletes, because they're often, many of my students are so consumed after school with piano lessons and personal workouts and team play that the discretionary time after school has evaporated for a lot of students. So I like the model, but I don't think it's entirely practical across the board. But how great that there is that option, which I think is ideal.
And the equity issues too.
Yeah.
Like I had an interview with a parent, and they live a mile out of Brandon, and they're like, our internet costs $200 a month to have a speed that's fast enough to say watch like videos online. And they have 4 kids who are doing this all at the same time.
Wow.
And they're like, there's a fiber optic line outside our house. They're like, yeah, we can hook up. It's $7,000. And then we have to sign like a 2 or 3 year contract where it's like $300 a month.
Wow.
So it's like, that's to get, I mean, it's fiber optic, but there's no other option.
So much for the savings living out of town and avoiding taxes, eh?
Yeah.
So if they don't get you one way, you're paying another. I didn't know that. Wow.
I would love to see school just change totally and be more like a learning center than what we have now traditionally. Like it's still geared up for like the Industrial Revolution, getting kids ready to work in factories and stuff. And I think we could be so much more. And I think this could be the tipping thing. If kid could just come to your class, talk to you a little bit and go home and do the rest of the stuff. Like, we always worry about attendance and those type of things. Or I know even my own son, he works best at like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
and he's working hard in that. And some kids might have to work or help their family out, and that type of a thing. Could it just be a learning center where teachers are more like coaches and mentors, and and helping kids? If the kid doesn't have access, they can come to the learning center and get all the things that they need. But school would be more a place like, you'd have to, maybe you do phys ed every day where you have to do yoga or work out or whatever. So you're doing a half an hour of physical activity each day. But if you're playing a sport like hockey, you get a credit for that because you're keeping fit in that. I know sporting teams, it could just be so much more, and teachers could be so much more, and you could get more done with students rather than just kind of like spoon feeding them or whatever. If it takes a kid 2 months to get done a course, right on, you got that. And give them mastery learning. Like when they show that they've mastered it, not just reached the 50, then they can move on. But if it takes a kid 2 years to get it, let it take 2 years. Like just don't like push them forward on that. If a kid can graduate when they're 16 and they know what they're doing, let them. But if it takes a kid longer and they need till they're 20, well, that's fine. Like I don't know. Like I just wish we could blow everything up with the traditional way of thinking and move forward where kids are and their learning path, is kind of what goes main rather than, you're coming into my class and I'm in this little box and you have to learn my way and you have to do everything my way. And that's the only way you're going to succeed. Not every kid learns that way. Some kids do, but you can still have that for them. If a kid wants to travel around the world with their folks, why couldn't they take online classes or whatever? We could be so much more is kind of my thoughts on this. And I kind of wish this would be maybe a catalyst for that. Sorry, I could go on, but I'll stop there.
No, that's really good. I think you're right. We could do so much more, and this is bringing it all to the forefront.
But I hear what you're saying.
Clear,
yeah. Pardon me. I hear what you're saying, but and I do like to be able to, accommodate some people. But with this whole COVID crisis, I think it brings to light how enjoyable a lot of the time simultaneous classes are. They miss each other. They want to be together. They want to have discussions with their peers on the topic. So, having classes, there's merit in it more than just the isolated process of learning. It's the camaraderie. It's the bouncing ideas off people. So, I think, as I'm sure you'd agree, that there's room for both. And if more flexibility was built in the system, we could meet needs even better.
Well, I even see my own son. He's in grade. Well, he's graduated now, which is another thing I was going to ask you guys, because now in Saskatchewan, every student gets a 50 unless they had nothing done before, and you can only go up on it. But I see my son and his buddies. They're on Discord and they're playing video games, but they're also doing their homework, and it's just interesting to see their workflow. That they have online and the way they're talking, and they're all at their homes, but they're interacting in that. That's what you still need to have a learning center, I think, to have, the social, aspect, because that's really important too. Like, how do we treat each other and how do we do that? But a lot of it's turning to online too, and then that's like what our class was just about on digital citizenship. How does that just become citizenship, and what we do in a school or on a job site or whatever, that should also reflect how we do online as well. But I don't think you can get rid of school in terms of a building. It always has to be a learning center with social interactions, but it could look a lot different and meet more kids. What about the kid that feels bullied all the time, and they're not getting their work done at school because they're worried about getting bullied? This might give that kid the opportunity to succeed and find, the help that they're looking for and go forward. So it can work that way too. If a student has mental health issues, maybe this type of learning might allow them to get the comms they need and that to move forward and that too. So there's like I said, there's a whole we could talk forever. I could talk forever on that kind of a topic.
Well, I think there's one way that
the blended model has the most potential.
Well, and this blended model will move forward under one condition. And guess what the condition is? That it's cheaper. So, and that's kind of like the deciding factor. It's not going to be if it's better, is if it's cheaper. And what makes me lead to the next question is, hey, potentially with the streaming and flexibility, are we working ourselves out of a job? Now, probably not us, because we probably have seniority, but are we reducing the numbers of teachers that are required because we, I teach, there's several personal finance classes in my school. Maybe I'm the best teacher of it. Everyone watches my video and we only need 2 instead of 3 teachers. Maybe we're going there. In fact, isn't that why Ford in Ontario wanted to bring in online classes just shortly as last year? Because it was a cost saving somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely kind of see what you're saying. I think teachers need to change their practice, right? Like, I think right now, majority of teachers are teacher-centered. Majority of our classrooms are teacher-centered. And I think what we need to do, and kind of what Dean says, we need to move towards student-centered learning. And I think by moving towards student-centered learning and allowing teachers to become facilitators of learning rather than what I like to call the gatekeepers of knowledge, I think we can, in some sense, that provides us opportunities still to work with kids in a different, maybe not so different aspect, I guess, of what we were doing before for some of us, but kind of allows us to kind of keep our jobs in that sense. So I don't know.
I'd love to facilitate learning, which I think we all do, but especially in particular classes like math and English, there are specific outcomes that have to be met in a confined amount of time. And at this point, with those specific outcomes that have to be met on the report card, it does not lend itself to flexibility in facilitating explorative learning.
Well, I would love to go on it. We should all use our PD. I want to do a field trip to Finland, because everything I read about Finland, it sounds like, they've even almost got rid of classes and stuff, and kids are project-based. Every teacher in Finland, the teacher has to have like a master's degree. They get paid the same as a doctor and lawyers in Finland. And I hear that you only have a class size of about 12. So just imagine the relationships you can build if you only had a class size of 12 kids. And Finland always scores well on the PISA tests and stuff too. I would really like to see that, because I think you could do so much more with kids if they believe in you and you're learning with them and you're a content expert, but you also show them your level learning too. And you can do different things with the kids, and they're working on practical things rather than like, they have to meet outcomes. Is that just to give something on a test and they know it for, like, I even talked to my own kid, he does well in school, but he knows how to memorize for the test. And then after you ask him, and he might not really remember like the next week exactly what that was. So, are these outcomes, is it just doing well on a test and that means you understand it, or could it be so much more?
Oh, it could always be more, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I just got a great idea. PD, all of us to Finland.
That's it. Let's do this.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. Actually, our STF has a thing called the McDowell thing where you can do research. And
We're
have you heard of that,
gonna
Curtis?
go to the ISTE conference if they
I want to do that too. The ISTE.
congregate together again.
My budget is like going out right now with all these crazy adventures that we're all planning.
Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Have you guys heard about what they do in Finland? Is that?
Yep. No,
Curtis, would you agree with that?
Yeah. Everything that you said, that I've also heard that too. Yeah.
So I think we could be even more important right now than ever before, especially when you look at our world. Like, the kids need that, and I think teachers could be elevated rather than just be the content knowledge. You could just go, you can just go look on YouTube or anywhere on the internet. We have as much access to information in the history of humankind. So now our job becomes, well, how do you make sense of that? Like what we were just talking about in our class, right? What's fake or what's real? How do you get that? How do you do that research to know what's going on? All those kind of things. I think it elevates us more to then just like, here's a math equation. Like, I think, okay, where's that math equation in the context? How do you learn that? So, a lot of kids, a lot of times in class will say, when will I ever use this? But if you can focus on the learning and you can get them to realize that, hey, when I learn this, I can go take these learning strategies to other things. I know where my strengths and weaknesses are a learner, and I want to be a lifelong learner and move forward, is kind of what I think we need more in school, because a lot of the jobs that are existing right now from the research won't exist in the future. How are we going to make our kids problem solvers? How are they going to be critical thinkers? They have to be able to take on whatever the world's going to happen. Like maybe, kids, if they did that down the road, kids will be figuring out how to make a vaccine for something a lot quicker than we do now, right? So that's kind of why I see why we need to change a little bit. There's always the thing like, oh, you can't use your calculator. What if you don't have a calculator? Now we're all carrying around our phones. We have a calculator everywhere, right? So, some of those, things that you'll never have this before. When we, now it's like, how do you process this? How do you use this? Instead of banning the phones, how do you use it to learn? Those type of things, because it's not going away.
That is very well said. I think you're right, Dean and Curtis. Like, this is only bringing to the forefront how teachers need to shift to being facilitators of learning, right? It's like you say, like everybody's got a calculator in their pocket. Nobody knows how to use it to, do something useful, right? Like use it in useful ways, or use it to solve the problems that they're having or affronting. I think that, like, this whole school closure thing is only, if we do this right, like if teachers do this right, like it can bring to the forefront how important it is to have teachers in rooms, and probably more teachers than we have now. But like you said, the shift from being the content knowledge person to being the facilitator of learning, to be the nexus point of like, yeah, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? Let's make it happen. Let's do it collaboratively.
Right.
Whatever, like you're doing a project, you're doing it individually, you're doing it with other people. You're collaborating with people in Saskatchewan or across the world. Like there's so many amazing opportunities and team building things that we can get kids to do. But that's the number one thing I think is important, is like kids being able to work with other kids.
I don't think that that's a dispute. I think what the problem is we have our administrators always want to be able rather to have evidence that we've done something.
Just do it. Just
evidence.
Data driven.
Just do it and ask for forgiveness. Like I've never.
And I do. You know that.
Yeah, and I know you do.
Yeah,
I know. I know you do.
I don't worry about.
And who's ever gotten in trouble? Nobody. Exactly.
Nobody.
Yeah.
But there's always that. What if someone asks, and how can I prove that I've done this and met these outcomes? And
well, how ridiculous,
and administration doesn't want to take a lot of time figuring out what we're doing. They want to see at a glance.
Yeah.
And that lends himself to tests. And I'm not endorsing that, but that's that's the efficacy of
But this whole thing is like, at least for me, is really painted how ridiculous tests are.
It's trust issues, man. It's all about trust.
They're so ridiculous. Like when my class did the YouTube videos and stuff instead of doing tests. Yeah. I was like, okay, so they make a YouTube video. They spend hours making it, right? And like they learn the content anyways. And like, yeah, they might still forget it in 10 or 15 days, but at least now they have a video of it.
Yeah.
And they had a good time.
The problem is wisdom can't be quantified.
Yeah. So who cares? Let's not try to quantify
it. But our superiors want some evidence. So because you know what? They want to show that they're doing well, and how can they prove it unless they have numbers? That's their only way to know how to prove it.
Then switch to an e-portfolio or something like that. If all of Mateo's students would put together all the work that they've done and show that in their body of evidence, like that's, to me, that shows more about their learning and the evidence more than a test.
I agree, but again, for the administrators, just knowing from where they come from, they can't put that. They can't put that into a chart.
It's starting to sound like
put that into a pie chart.
It's starting to sound like the Matrix, where it's like the machines are watching us.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's true. Like provincially, there's the politics of it all, and that's like a whole other
but that's
conversation.
Why. But that is why.
Oh, for sure. But I still think teachers pushing back and just being like, this is what I'm going to do.
Oh, you should definitely go with your inspiration.
Like, figure out your assessment.
You want me to put a grade on the portfolio? Sorry, Dean, what were you saying?
No, it's okay. No,
I was just going to say, like, we can put a grade on the portfolio. Be like, yeah, sure. They got 90% on the portfolio there. That was the test.
And you're right. I mean, in terms of being challenged in, decades, I've almost virtually never been challenged by my superiors or otherwise.
So maybe they're on our side. Or
so
maybe they don't want to know.
a part of this, the way we're conducting ourselves and worrying about tests is a manifestation of our own fears, not necessarily the reality of our experience.
I think lots of it comes even above our administrators, right? Like it's right from the top, right? Like that's what our provincial government is looking for, and that's what ultimately Canada is looking for to compare, right? So I think, yeah, like I see exactly what you're saying, but I think it ultimately, like our principals, they don't make those choices. And so I kind of feel like lots of principals are kind of on our side, but I feel like lots of them too are they just kind of do what they're told. We're kind of all masters of the puppet or the top is the master of the puppet, and we're all the people down below. So
I'm so glad you said that. Like everybody's just sort of doing what they're told, and we're all assuming, like, I'm sure there's lots of teachers out there. I certainly used to be one, like 4 or 5 years ago. I was like, well, what happens if I don't have, like who's gonna come and like yell at me and tell me I'm in trouble if I didn't do it this way or that way? And then I think like what you said, April, like just after a while you just realize, well, nobody's coming. and then you start experimenting and doing like interesting things.
And certainly as a experienced, I'll say, teacher, I feel quite liberated in being confident in my track record, and knowing I haven't had any issues gives me that freedom to say, hey, yeah, let's go here. Let's try this. Where as a younger, newer teacher, I wouldn't have taken those chances. I was certainly more focused in having evidence of what I've done. And now I'm much less worried about that. And it's made me a way better teacher.
Yeah, you take risks all the time. Like you have that competition where I made that trophy for you, the keyboarding trophy.
Oh, yeah.
And like it's a competition, right?
Yeah.
But you're using that.
Yeah,
it's instead of doing like a test or something, it's like you turn it into a game.
Yeah.
And the kids love it. Yeah. That's
But
great.
Mateo, I like what you're doing now in terms of, you said it nobody sees, but now you're using social media to leverage and to show what you're doing in the classroom. And like it's great to see like your students recognized by Wakelet, and how motivating is that for kids, right? Rather than a test, like to have that, when your kids see that, they're going to be like super pumped, and like you say, that's going to cause the next group to say, well, we got to one up them, and that. And there's probably no mark with that, right?
Yeah. What did you say? How do I
said there's probably no mark with, well, even if there was a mark, I think it's more about they want quality, because now they're not just doing the test for you. Now they see that other people are seeing their work. And when they realize there's a bigger audience out there to seeing their work, and it's just not, well, let me just do enough so Mr. DeMiro can, give me a grade, and, that's my ceiling. Now that the bar is raised and you can really see what these kids are can do. And that, I think that's really empowering.
Most of the kids just want to be internet famous. They're like, I'm going to make this video. And
TikTok.
Yeah, and it's true, and like we made a rubric together, like how we were gonna grade the videos, and we improved it throughout the course, but like it really just it wasn't even necessary by the end, because like most of them were just cranking out some really high quality work.
Well, I remember a few years ago, I to my grade 8s, I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the overwhelming answer, famous. It's not a career path, people, but you know what? This sort of activity that Mateo is doing leverages that desire, and you can't deny it. It's real.
And I did it by accident. I had no
plan. And then the world becomes your classroom too, right? Because other people are going to probably suggest to you or say this was great or whatever. Now you can tap into all these things. So I think we need to get out of the classroom and show our stuff and to share and get ideas. Like that's why Twitter has been so cool to me, or even our Sask chat that we had last night, just to kind of, share and grow our PL. And like going back to what we were talking at even the beginning of our conversation, I think that's a really huge aspect to move education forward as well, is to be social.
And then as everything moves online, we need, like you said, Dean, like the crap detection, right? Like the stuff you did to evaluate like what's good and what isn't and what's real and what's not. And
especially if they want to be famous.
Like your stuff where you went through like all the different ways you can get stuff online, right? Like you did the Wakelet stuff and what else did you? Yeah, but like that's the kind of stuff that teachers need to be doing. And if nobody's putting it out there, then how are like teachers who aren't in an education program ever going to learn it or have access to it? Right? Like, so just put your stuff online. Like that was a roadblock I had, was like, I was afraid. I'm like, well, my stuff sucks. So like, why would I want to put it online? But then you start doing it, and then you start getting feedback, and you're like, oh, like one person found it useful, 10 people found it useful, and then it just snowballs, Yeah, crazy.
Okay. Well, we expect kids all the time to come into our class and try new things and have an open mind and take risks. And do we sometimes do it as teachers? Or we shouldn't be scared to fail either if we don't expect. Failure is okay. Like if one person saw it, that's right on. But if you make a mistake or whatever, that's part of learning. And I think we need to be role models for our students that way as well. Like I think it's kind of hypocritical sometimes. Like do as I say, not as I do. I find that a lot with sometimes the way our mentality, especially when you look at technology. Well, I'm just not good at technology, so I won't do it. So should a kid be able to come say, Mr. Demir, I'm not good at math. I just won't do it. Like, where's the fairness in that is kind of what I struggle with sometimes.
Yeah,
For sure. Well,
We
guys,
gotta
I'm
wrap
going
it
to
up,
say,
yeah.
I'm going to wrap it up. I got a meeting coming. It's been a slice.
Yeah, no, let's do this again.